Hello. Today, I'm talking with Ian from Chicago, Illinois. Working with us here at Money Management International, Ian paid off an incredible $100,000 in debt in just a little over 4 years through MMI's debt management plan and increased his credit score by 70 points. Debt. We've all heard of it. Most of us have it. Debt seems to be an unavoidable reality of life. But what happens when it starts consuming life? Here at Money Management International, we believe that financial challenges aren't meant to be faced alone. On this podcast, we hear stories of people whose lives have been changed by MMI. Their stories are unique, personal, and inspiring. Stay tuned. We're sharing each guest's long story short. Ian, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, we're really happy to have you. I am super excited to talk to you today to hear your story. Paying off six-figure debt is amazing. I think I had to even ask you if I had it correct. And I can't wait to hear what that was like. But before we jump in and just start talking, can you tell us a little bit more about you, where you live, what you do?
Sure. I live in Chicago, Illinois. I'm a marketing communications writer for an educational not for profit. I have a 22-year-old daughter and I'm married.
Very nice. So we have nonprofit in common. That's nice to hear.
Mhm.
Let us know a little bit more about what was happening before you reached out to MMI, what was going on, how you found us, things like that.
Sure. Basically, what had happened was that I had a regular job for a long time at a university here in Chicago, and I lost my job during the Great Recession. And so during that time, as I was looking for work, I was getting part-time jobs. We were slowly sliding into debt, including a great deal of credit card debt that we are using to make up for the gaps in our income. Also, at the same time, for example, you would have a major car repair or things like that. And so, little by little, as we were trying to keep up, we just found ourselves getting more and more in debt. And then also, with a daughter approaching college, we were quite concerned about, we had those expenses of, her schooling and outside activities. And fortunately, we had some friends who had gone through the program. They were very successful in the program and they recommended it to us.
Always a trusted source is kind of a good thing in a situation like that. Another reason I was looking forward to talking to you today is that I feel like that situation is common. I think it happened to a lot of people during that time, and people were like, "Gosh, how do I handle this?" So,
Mhm, mhm.
tell us a little bit more about how working with the debt counselors here at MMI helped you see a path forward.
Well, I think that what happened was as soon as and this was my wife did a lot had a lot to do with putting with our communications with we both spoke with MFI, but as we talked together and as we looked at our budget, the main problem was how to move forward without having that cushion of credit cards since we were basically at our limit and we were still our economic situation was improving somewhat, but we were still challenged. And so once we had our conversations with the staff at MFI, and they were all terrific, by the way, it was clear what our path forward was, and that was simply no matter what, just living within our means without credit at that point.
Well, I want to ask you what your credit counseling experience is like. But before I do that, I wanted to go back to something that you said. You said we kind of made the commitment, whatever it takes. And so, again, I go back to that number $100,000 in just under five or a little over 4 years, under 5 years. It's incredible. And I am
Mhm.
sure that it took a lot of work and sacrifice and dedication. And so, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, first of all, my wife works full time. She has a career and took an extra job on top of that. I was freelancing at the time. I'm both a editor and a college teacher, so I was getting adjunct teaching classes and freelancing. And the freelancing started to pick up a bit, and then I actually, about at the same time that we went into the MMI program, I got a full time job at that point. So that made a huge difference. So that it was somewhat coincidental, but it was also crucial in terms of how we got through.
Yeah. So, sometimes we use this term financial beast mode, right? So
Mm,
I always think about it, it's like putting everything out on the table. And I love what you said. You just sort of like, whatever it takes, we're going to take different jobs, we're going to take extra jobs, we're going to do whatever it takes to meet this goal. I think that's the important thing. So thank you
sure.
for sharing that. Could you just tell us a little bit about like what the credit counseling experience was like with MMI, and also what would you say was the most important thing that you learned, the most important maybe lesson going through the process?
So when we enrolled and we sort of laid out, it's always difficult. You have to lay out your finances and say this is the situation we were in. They were very understanding. They got no sense of like there was no sense of anyone being judgmental. And then once we got going, it was essentially like I said. One of the main points was sort of knowing that what we had coming in uh, was how much you had to spend, and that was scary because there's just no cushion. There's no safety net, and so that part felt a little challenging. I think that the main thing I would say to people is that the process does work. A key part of it is, I would say, patience, because you receive, and for those people, when you're in the program, you receive a statement each month, and there is a round pie chart where it shows how much you paid. So the first one, it says 3% or whatever, and you think, oh my God, this is going to take forever. And it
Yeah.
does feel sometimes like when you're in the middle of it that it does take forever. But that was part of it. I think actually, well, I think that was one of the things that we took a certain amount of pride in, or not, maybe not so much pride, but it was sustaining to be able to see each time that we received the statement that we were making progress.
Yeah, and it's almost like building momentum, right? And so that 3% moves to 6 and then 9 and then 12, and it's like, "Hey, before you know it, you're at 50% of your goal. I can do this."
Yes, absolutely. That was huge. And of course, at the same time, there's this feeling like, oh no, we have this much, we still have this much more to go. And so
Yes, yes.
it is immersive. It is, and that's why I think patience is very important. You just have to realize that you have to stick with it, and it's not going to solve itself overnight.
Yeah, but it will, and I love it. One of the reasons I was so much looking forward to this conversation is that I feel like it's a fairly common story during that Great Recession and everything that happened with COVID. But debt by itself is such a common thing, regardless of why, but it's something
Mhm.
that we just don't talk about. So, how do you think debt counseling nonprofits like MMI are working to break that debt stigma?
Obviously, the main risk with debt is interest. You're paying interest rates and credit cards. Those are not always clearly stated up front, or if you miss a payment, you may end up with a much higher rate. And so there is a slippery slope to being in debt. And so the key point is that once that stops, that you have to sort of stop before you move forward. And so I think that whatever sense of disappointment in yourself, that you feel that you still have to, that you just realize that there's a way out, and you have to take it when you have the opportunity.
I think it's interesting what you said. So, that interest can sometimes make it feel like, and maybe this is part of the stigma, that interest can sometimes make it feel like you're working so hard, but you're seeing almost no progress. And so, what the heck, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of the process and it happens. We were able to get your interest rates down, and that played a big part in you being able to pay off that debt, obviously.
Yes, yes. That's a key part of it. Was the reduction in interest rates was a huge part of our being able to succeed at through the program.
Okay. So, last question, and this is probably the best question. Well, two questions. So, first,
Mhm.
what does being debt free mean for you?
Oh my God, it's just like it's night and day. I can't tell you that when talking about the circle and the on the statement when we finally paid it off was just a tremendous feeling, and I don't think that was something that when we were at our lowest point that we anticipated we would be able to get to. So it was, yeah, it was just it was both enlightening, both exhilarating, and in a way kind of unexpected, even though we watch it happen step by step, month by month throughout the process.
Yeah, it's probably almost like this was such a thing for so long and now it's gone. And that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. It definitely feels like a major load off of our shoulders, and also at the same time, life being what it is. So we have a daughter that was just going through college, and so there was a certain amount of student loan debt that goes along with that,
Mhm.
and so that would have been even more hard to overcome if that had happened while we were still in debt. So it was tremendous
Sure.
that we were able to be in a position where we could help her with those payments.
Wonderful. And then the last question. So now that you've been able to achieve that debt reduction goal and, get where you want to be, what comes next? What will you do next with that money you were able to free up, and what's the next big goal you want to crush?
Well, I think the first goal is obviously to help her daughter with student loans, and also we were one of the things, for example, that like absolutely was not happening during the time that we were in debt was that we didn't travel anywhere, and so we're hoping to take a trip to celebrate my daughter's graduation in the near future.
Oh, that's wonderful. When does she graduate?
She graduated this just no just this last spring. She graduated.
Ah, congratulations. So these are big milestones all the way around. That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that you wanted to share?
We're tremendously grateful to MMI. One of the things you mentioned that we're both members of not for profits, that was a huge boon for us. That it made us feel confident that there was a legitimate operation that and not some sort of fly by night thing that's just designed to get your money. So we were very glad that we made that decision, and I would highly recommend it to everybody.
Aw, thank you. I'm glad you made the decision too. And I loved talking to you today. I loved hearing your story and chatting with you and just having you share some insights. So thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck, and best of luck to your daughter.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Long Story Short, brought to you by Money Management International. To learn more about our work and how we're helping people in all walks of life repay debt, balance their budget, and find lasting financial peace of mind, visit moneymanagement.org.